Alright, greetings everyone. Here's the next installment. I have, for the sake of you guys, I have not moved forward in any fashion. It's still stuck down from the last video. And now this video will probably be quite lengthy, so with that said, I want to go ahead and get busy without much ado. I want to go ahead and get the nose ready to go on, and I want to do something about these lines I spoke of. I want to get the back finished up. I want to take care of these little things here, trim out the ears. So yeah, let's get busy. Again, I'm just stippling on a little latex, and I'm dripping. That's never good, but just stippling on a little latex so that we can apply the clown nose. And put a little inside the clown nose as well. Still stuffed with a cotton ball from the last video. I haven't done anything special to it. So we'll set that there. Let that get tacky. In the meantime, let's go ahead and I'm just going to go ahead and flip this down to where it's kind of out of the way. And I'm going to start on this side, the one that was closest to you guys. And I'll stop and stick that nose on here in just a few moments. But I'm going to start here, trim out this ear, and take care of this thing that we've got going on. So, cuticle scissors, gently punch a hole. And if they're sharp enough, you should, almost just be able to clip it right out. And now when you're doing this, you want to be very careful and not cut the underlying pantyhose part of the mask. All you're wanting to trim away here is the sock mask, or the ball cap portion. Don't, if you feel like you're lifting too much and you're fixing to get into the, let's set my southern draw fixed. If you feel like you're about to get into the actual mask, then just stop. Only trim what you absolutely need to trim. Now, from time to time I've had people ask me, well, how do you know where to cut just to go around the ears? If you've done this as much as I have, then you've got a pretty good idea about where the bald cap's gonna lay. So you just cut along that. The main thing, I guess, the easiest way to put it is just cut around the ear. But no, that sounds way too easy. Anyway, that's not the greatest job, really, in my opinion, either. But while it's wet, let's, there you go, you can see it. But let's go ahead and rub latex in such a manner, pardon me, I know I'm flipping it around where you guys can't see, but I'm right hand dominant. But there's little edges that if you get a little latex on your sponge, you can kind of scrape it up underneath that edge, so to speak, and by doing that, you can get, once you got the latex underneath it, then you can kind of move it and stick it where you need it to go, if that makes any sense. But in the meantime, while that is tacking up, before I really go to push it where I want it to, let's go ahead and get this nose on. Now I'm starting at the bottom and kind of pushing up onto it. And now that I've got it pretty well seated where I want, the main thing is to attach it to the mask. Not so much pushing it onto the face, but the edges. Now we'll seam this out, and it'll be a lot more seamless when I'm done. But I know right now it kind of looks like I just stuck something stupid on the front of his face, but it'll it all comes out, I assure you. Okay, now that that's on, I'm gonna let that kind of get, actually, trusty popsicle stick. I mentioned this before. But yeah, that with these you can reach underneath something, so to speak, and kind of dab it to show you kind of underneath it, just to get a little extra latex up in there, and then yeah, that's still a little moist. We'll let that seat or get tacky. We'll work on that more in a moment. But for the time being, let's go ahead and start pushing down this latex ball cap. No, what am I doing now? I'm actually, because the ball cap is not attached around the ear, there's a flap all the way around. I'm actually putting my finger on the ball cap here and then pushing back toward the ear. So when I do that, it takes and pushes it as far as it'll go and then attach, which also will help get rid of your seam line. And I'm doing that all the way around the ear, so that as I push it inward, it's going as close up to that ear as possible and before it attaches. Okay, now we've got a little bit of a gap here at the right at the earlobe. I'll admit I started cutting a little low, but otherwise it's pretty. It's just right around the ear like it needs to be. And I'm gonna go ahead and trim this little. We got a little thing here, as mentioned in the previous video. I'm gonna trim that right off. Now I do have the curve of these scissors against the mask, so there's no chance of the sharp tip of the scissors accidentally cutting anything. And now that that's cut off, you should be able to just get that last little fold to tuck right in it without any latex. There's generally should be enough sticky underneath that it disappears. Now we have a similar one on this side. I'm going to go ahead and take care of as well. And I'm doing the same thing. Got the curve of the scissors against the mask. And just push it down. Anything that's left. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and trim around this ear. I'm going to take a little bit better care though and pay attention to where my earlobe is. again, we're going to, believe it or not, it may be a tool I have not mentioned. I actually have a pair of, they're like scissor tweezers, and I like to use them sometimes to lift up to get the latex underneath there. And this is just one of those cases. I think you can pick them up at, I don't know, CVS, something like that. But the same thing, we're just wiping latex up underneath that edge. Which will give it something to stick to in a moment when I start pushing it. Now, in the meantime, I'm just going to kind of let it sit and get tacky like we did on the other side. And in the meantime, I'm going to, wow, I was really smeared it up that time. But we're going to go ahead and attach the nose on this side a little bit better. Sides. This is supposed to be a creepy clown. His nose does not have to be exactly round. As a matter of fact, I think that with a creepy clown, you're probably a little better off for things being a little obscure, or askew, sorry, because the less symmetrical things are, the more creepy it tends to be. And before I really get into the neck and all of that, I figure I should go ahead and start in with this ear. I'm going to start at the top and move down the sideburn, pushing in toward the ear just like I did on the other side, so that the ball cap, there's a little too much latex there, will attach as close to the ear as possible. Now, when doing the makeup and using the ball cap, this is totally different. This is more of a permanent job. This is an armature, obviously, so therefore it's not moving. An actor would probably have some serious issue with you grabbing hold of the top of their head. I know where I've done my fair share of creature acting in indie films and whatnot, that I don't mind being in the makeup, but yeah, don't force me, so to speak. Don't manhandle me. And I guess where I've done this as well, then I know exactly, in most cases, what to tell them. Look, man, you don't have to be so heavy-handed. But yeah, with an armature, it's much easier. And I have obviously stippled way too much latex underneath there, because I'm getting quite a bit of seepage as I'm pushing it up around the ear. Of course, I guess all that really is going to mean in the end is a really good adhesion. Okay. All the way around that ear. And let's face it too, I mean, the style of hair I'm going to put on this clown, you probably won't even be able to see the ears ultimately when I'm done, because we're going to do the classic bald head with the hair, around this way. And but I still, just in case, guy gets crazy, he starts flapping his head around, I want it to look as good as I can. But I guess that's part of just being an artist. I know, and for some people say that's part of being an artist, is that you just can't be satisfied until it meets your expectation. At least for the project. I mean, after all this, pardon me, far from the Taj Mahal, but if you're going to make a sock mask, do it right the first time, I think. Now that we're ready to address the back of the head, kind of pull it up as far as there's no stick, so to speak. Hold that in place. Get you a little latex on your sponge again, and just stipple all over the back of the neck, just like you have the scalp and all before. I mean, we're not casting a mask, we're trying to simply get the latex to stick. And don't be afraid to push up toward the bald cap, because if you've got a slight edge there, you're really doing nothing more than just packing latex in where it needs to be. But at the same time, you don't want it super glopped on, because then you'll get a lot of seepage, so to speak, when you try to push it into place. Okay, so now that that's all tacked down, whoop, hold it up, don't let it stick yet. We want that to get a little tacky. And before you push it down into place, try to, well, really I like to start on one side, frankly, at least on masks, because you've already got one edge stuck right here rather nice. So I like to pull back, honestly, a little further than it needs to be, and then stretch on the opposite side. And then that way, when you come back up here to the top, see right here, there's a little line, I can see it, you might not be able to see it on the camera, but where from here up it's stuck, from there down it's not. You can tell there's liquid latex underneath it. We'll start there and just gently push down, but at the same time you're wanting them to move to the edge of the bald cap. That way you're going to force out any excess latex, as well as start the adhesion process. And by doing it that way, you should be able to, if you do it right, you should be able to get a rather fine line on your bald cap without having a major seam to deal with. Now, it is still very moist, so again, patience. You can't expect it to just, we're not dealing with super glue here. And now that that side is pretty well down with very little seam issue, I'm going to start in the middle and put that down. And do the same thing again. Now that that's in place, kind of, and then start back at the top. Once I get this latex off my fingers. Start back at the top. And work your way down. Now, if for some reason you need to cut your bald cap and put a seam in it, and you take, an alterate, so to speak, I'll do something like that similar over here when I get to that issue that's on this side of the neck. But try, if at all possible, to not do it in the center. A lot of stretch is going to happen there when people try to put this mask on their head, and that would be I don't slit my masks. I know a lot of masks you buy them at Party City, whatever. A lot of them, well, those are made out of vinyl anyway. And that's why they put the slit in them, because they don't stretch. They're made out of vinyl. If you put this on, if you watch another video, someone once requested, well, how do you put on a mask? Okay. I thought that was kind of an odd request. But nonetheless, I realized after I published the video that apparently not many people knew how to properly put on a mask. So I was shocked at how many views it got. And I only hope that I was able to teach somebody the proper way to put on a mask, because if you use that technique to apply your mask, then you really shouldn't have an issue damaging the mask. I know haunted houses out there that have spent stupid amounts of money, let's be honest, stupid amounts of money for silicone masks for their haunt. And then those silicone masks make it not even a season. I've worked in one particular haunted house that I won't name, where the mask was purchased that season, just previous to the season. It was worn I don't know, a couple of weeks, and I was making silicone repairs around the mouth because it was torn at, so to speak. It just wasn't taken care of. So I find that's another thing about these sock masks, is it's a relatively decent alternative that's more it emotes and articulates like a second skin, but yet doesn't have any of the cost of a silicone mask. Now, if you're shooting a film and you're looking for absolute realism, hey, I'm right there with the rest of those guys. George and Andrew, all them over there, Mortal Masks, I'm right there with them. You know, silicone all the way. But and for your well-seasoned actors, at least in haunted houses, your well-seasoned actors, those guys, hey, if you know that's he's been back, you know, your particular haunt's been open 4 or 5 years running, and you got a particular guy that comes back every year and does an amazing job for you every year, then why not? You know, go ahead and sculpt the guy up something nice. Do it in silicone, because you know he's going to take care of it. He's going to listen to what you tell him and not just treat it like he would something like this. Because I can honestly say, a sock mask like this, you can, well, if you take care of it, I've seen them last, I guess, 3 or 4 years. Because I know Fear of the Woods over in Stockbridge certainly has some of mine that are every bit of 3 or 4 years old, and they still use them. Still use them. Frankly, I was working over there this past Halloween, little anecdote, and I was kind of, it's nice to go back and see, you know, some of your creations that you did, wow, at this point, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, and see how well they're still holding up in a haunted house. And yet how much effort was put into making them. Not that I'm saying it was, you know, there wasn't any love, so to speak, put into making them. There was. But it doesn't have to be that expensive if done right. That has, I guess, a passion for it. And I'm not saying that I've got any more than anybody else, but I love making monsters. I can't think of any other profession I would rather do. Well, I don't know. Maybe an in-the-know stockbroker. That just, you know, he just goes to his office every morning and he knows exactly what to buy that's going to make money with very minimal risk. But I don't know anybody like that. Time travel has not been invented yet, to my knowledge. And even then, I guess that goes back to say that if it had, anecdotes with Kyle, no, if it had, that you would have to have that kind of money to gain that kind of access. So therefore, like, no one would have guessed it, but post 9/11, you know, airline stock was good stock. But if they'd have known what a big dip it was going to take when 9/11 happened, they'd have probably sold. But the really, really smart ones, if you look at stocks now and what airline stock is going for, the really, really smart ones, despite how far it dipped, they'd have hung on to it. Because right now, man, there's been some serious gains in the airline market. Not only that, but I've seen some serious gains in the firearms market. But that's due to all the, you know, the scare that Obama's going to tell them take your guns. Well, it requires a small army to disarm the entire American populace, and our army is sworn to uphold its citizens, so that won't be our own army. It would have to be a UN army, and let's face it, we know how things went in Vietnam, for example, fighting guerrilla fighters. Well, the UN don't have a clue, do they? Yes, I guess I'm very vocal on my gun rights. Anyway, let's not get into that. This is not meant to be political. I find that my mind is wandering to stay off the sorrowful happenings of yesterday. We won't get into that. But I will miss you, brother. So, there we go. Got a pretty decent seam going on. Ooh. Pushed a little too hard on that one. But it's sticking nicely. There's very little to no seam on this bald cap, and what there is that I'm seeing currently, I should be able to eliminate with the latex paste, so to speak, that I was telling you about. And okay, so there you go. It is completely laid down. I am going to go ahead and work on the mouth here a little bit. I'm going to open up this other bucket of latex that should have a little paste in it, for lack of a better way to put it. And I'm going to work on his mouth. Ooh, wow, that's a little stiffer than I thought. That's what she said. Now, where I say this is paste, it's just latex that's come up on the wall of the bucket, and it's dried out some, and it's gotten to about the consistency of cake icing. So I just spoon it right in, and then I will very, very delicately wipe it back off the prosthetic, making sure that I've only left it in the crack. Where it's needed. That's right. Mr. Moncrief Latex Crack Spackle. Want to market it somehow. Now, you might actually have to do this once, twice, because latex inherently shrinks as it cures. So, I mean, what appears like a nice layer in these crevices now might not be a nice layer in them after it dries. So, you may have to apply a little more. But the objective here at this current time is to just get some get the latex frosting spooned in there. Alright, so, and like I said, we'll probably have to do that a couple more times, but ultimately we've got everything laid down pretty good everywhere it needs to be. And I will, I'm going to take this in here and let it dry completely, and then we'll come back and we'll, at that point when I come back, I'm going to address all of the seam edges. So I'm going to go around all these little seam edges here, around the ears, around the whole prosthetic. We're going to address these places on the face again, at the bottom of the chin, all the way around the bald cap and everywhere else, all the way around. We're going to address all of those seams, and we'll let those dry. After that, I'll stipple on a couple of more coats of latex over the whole thing. Well, not really over the whole thing, mainly over the, around here, all the edges, seams. I'll stipple it on just like we did down here, a couple more layers. That way, it will help bond everything together. And but anyway, we'll get to that, and then of course we'll move on to painting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and there you have it. Go make stuff.